Well, hey! Welcome back to the third episode of Jesus Freaks. Today, I would like to talk about the purpose of parables. You see, Jesus decided to start speaking in parables on a certain day. There's a reason why. He didn't just all of a sudden come up and say, oh, well, I need to speak in parables. I need to speak in riddles and try to let people figure out what they mean. No. Instead, I got to take you back a little bit and let you know about Jesus and his ministry. You see, Jesus started his ministry when he was 30 years old. He had a 3-year ministry. In his first year, he went to Judea, ministered all across Judea. In his second year, he ministered in Galilee. That was what we call the Galilean ministry. Now, here is when he started speaking in parables. It was actually at the end of his second Galilean ministry. Now, let me talk to you about that day that he started speaking in parables, because there is a very specific reason on why. You see, Jesus, and his parables, they were walking through a grain field on the Sabbath, mind you. And you can find this text in Matthew 12. They were walking through a grain field, and Pharisees saw them walking through the grain field. Well, if you know about the Sabbath and how the Pharisees looked at the Sabbath, you'll find that there is a ton of laws that they bestowed upon the Sabbath. Not so much by God's doing, because if you look back into the Old Testament laws, you'll find there is one. I said but one rule for the Sabbath, and that's rest. Man, take a day off. Relax. Don't work. Don't exert yourself. The Sabbath was for us, as it says in Isaiah 6:9. The Sabbath is for joy. But the Pharisees took it out of context. They wanted to put a bunch of stipulations on the Sabbath, meaning you couldn't walk, you definitely couldn't harvest, you couldn't work. Man, I'm telling you the truth, it'd probably be hard to get out of bed back in those days without violating the Sabbath. Well, anyways, we continue on. Jesus is walking through the grain field with his disciples. Disciples pluck off a couple heads of grain. Well, that's harvesting to the Pharisees, and they see this. They ask the Lord, why? Why do you pluck off the grain? Why do you violate the Sabbath? The Lord, let me paraphrase at this point. The Lord says, who are you, basically? I am the Lord of the Sabbath. Now, that was the start of the day that he started speaking in parables. Now, later that day, he left the grain field, went to the synagogue. In the synagogue, he saw a man. This man had a withered hand. Well, the Pharisees saw that and wondered if Jesus would violate the Sabbath again. You see, Jesus loved violating the Sabbath. So for all you Jesus freaks out there, you're also rebels of Christ. Rebel? That's just another word for Jesus Christ back in the day. He was a rebel to the Jews. But anyways, Jesus does heal that man in the synagogue with the withered hand. That man is healed. Pharisees, oh my gosh, he healed on the Sabbath. What is going on? But if you look in the text of Mark, you'll find out in the same synagogue, he was also exorcising and driving a demon out of a man. Now, this man knew Jesus by name and said, oh my gosh, you're the Son of Man. You're Christ. I know who you are. Please have mercy on me. The demon said, have mercy on me. That's powerful right there, folks. Well, anyways, the Pharisees heard about this. And they said, well, if he casts out demons, he must be from hell. He's from Beelzebub. at that moment, after the Pharisees had seen him work on the Sabbath, supposedly, they saw him heal on the Sabbath, even though he is Lord of the Sabbath. And then they also heard of him exorcising, driving out demons on the Sabbath. They plotted to destroy him. That's right. Destroy him. Officially. Now, keep in mind, Jesus has been doing this for 2 years already. Pharisees have been chasing him, trying to catch him. They just haven't yet. Now, they can honestly say he's violated the law. Jesus is all-knowing. Keep that in mind, believers. Jesus is all-knowing. He knew the Pharisees' thoughts right before they committed it. And so he decided, well, it's time for me to start speaking in parables. So what does he do? He leaves the synagogue. He goes out to the Sea of Galilee. A great multitude follows him. I mean, we're talking 3,000, 5,000. I mean, if you're Jesus, I mean, just keep that in mind. Imagine Miley Cyrus coming out here to Paisley, coming out to your hometown. You're going to have thousands show up. That's how it is when a celebrity is. Jesus was a celebrity to the believers back then. So a great multitude came out, and they saw him. He went out into a boat with a couple of his disciples and started preaching so they could hear him. He started preaching in many parables. First one, we all know. And if you don't, please look it up. It's a great parable. The parable of the sower. But he also speaks in other parables. You might have heard of them. The Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, and the list goes on. There's about 40 parables altogether, give or take. But they're only found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That's right. God bless Paisley. Anyways, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are where the parables are found. So anyways, Jesus is preaching to them in parables. And the disciples, they want to know why. Okay, so parables are not just so much readings, they want to know why. So, they ask, Jesus interprets them for them. He tells them the meaning of the parables. And now they know. So now they can explain. But the true meaning of the parables was this. Jesus knew that the Pharisees were out to destroy him. He knew that he had to fulfill the law from Isaiah. He also knew he had 1 year to go before the law was fulfilled of his crucifixion. And so, from that day forward, after the Pharisees had officially decided to destroy Jesus, when Jesus preached in public, he preached in parables. That is the reason for parables. Be blessed because you understand parables. Be blessed because you hear the parables. Parables, for instance, like the Good Samaritan, are about 4 things. You can take 4 things out of parables. You can take, number 1, salvation. You can take, number 2, mercy. You can take 3, judgment. And you can take 4, and 4 might be the most important, the kingdom of heaven. For instance, if you remember the Good Samaritan, you will remember the reason why he told the Good Samaritan. It's a great story. We all do good because of it. I'm not taking away from that. But if you remember, a lawyer came up to Jesus. He asked Jesus, Lord, Savior, "What must I do to enter the kingdom of heaven?" Now keep in mind, this lawyer, he's a Sadducee. Alright, he's a keeper of the law. Back in the day, if you heard my last video about hate your enemies, you will know that lawyers kept the law. They passed it down unto the others. Well, he wanted to know, how can I be saved, Lord? He was kind of being a smart aleck. Jesus replies like this: "Well, being that you're a lawyer, you know what the text says. Please, read it back to me." And he does. He says, well, the text says to love the Lord with all thy soul, with all thy heart, with all thy mind, and to love thy neighbor as thyself, which is the biggest commandment, the most important commandment. And if you can do those two things, you will fulfill the law found in Galatians 5. Well, Jesus says, yes, you answered correctly to the lawyer. Now, please, carry on. Go and do likewise. But you see, the lawyer, he just had to pry a little bit more. He had to kind of dig in. He had ill intentions. He's trying to make a mockery of Jesus. He's trying to sell wolf tickets to Jesus. Come on now. Jesus is the man. So he asks him, Lord, please, tell me, who is my neighbor? Now, if you've seen my last video, you will know who your neighbor is. Your neighbor is everyone. Everyone around you. Anyone that you come in contact with. So here's what Jesus replies with. He replies with the Good Samaritan. Now, he could have easily said, oh, love your enemies. Love everybody. Love anybody you come in contact with. He could have been simple about it. But you see, parables are here to hide the truth from unbelievers. They are to pass judgment onto Pharisees, people that won't hear the truth, people that just reject Christ. And so, Jesus actually shows mercy by telling him the parable of the Good Samaritan. And if you're not familiar, I'll paraphrase. The Good Samaritan is basically like this. There is a beaten Jewish man on the side of the road. Now, the road that he is on is from Jerusalem to Jericho. If you ever got a chance to go there, it's amazing, beautiful, but the road is true. It is a windy, turvy, dark road. It's worse than the south side of Chicago or the streets of Birmingham, Alabama. Just kidding. It's horrible, though. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho is horrible. Full of thieves. Well, anyways, Jewish man walking. Gets beaten, torn, tattered, left for dead. 3 men walk by. First one, a Jewish priest. Well, he's a man of the law. That should be no question for him. As he walks by, he says, well, this is kind of, I ain't got time for this. Walks on. A Levite also walks by. Now, this Levite, one of the 12 tribes, should have seen the same situation. He does not. The third man that comes by is powerful. This is a Samaritan. A good Samaritan. Now, if you know a little bit about the history of the Samaritans, you will know Jews hate Samaritans. Samaritans hate Jews. They are like scum beneath the toes to each other. But yet that Samaritan walks by, sees this man crippled, dead, hurt, pours oil on him, takes him to the nearby inn, gives him money, sends him on his way, shows him mercy, shows him compassion. Jesus gets done telling the lawyer this story. Now, keep in mind, these are supposed to be for judgment to Pharisees. Parables are for judgment to Pharisees. But yet Jesus gives this certain Sadducee, this certain lawyer, a chance. And asks him, please, tell me, which out of the three are righteous? That lawyer looks at Jesus and says, the one who showed him mercy. Mercy. The one that showed him mercy. So today I am here to tell you to love your enemies, to show mercy, to understand that the parables were spoken for a reason. Jesus didn't just all of a sudden in his 3-year ministry say, hey, I need to speak in parables, I need to speak in riddles, just because they're going to relate to it. Even though parables are about real people doing real things in real life, they have a spiritual truth behind them. The more that you understand salvation, the more you will understand the parables. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to talk to you again. Episode 4 is coming soon.